What's up, guys? This is JD. In this video, I'm gonna talk about poker. I'm just gonna ramble on poker strategy, poker whatever. I just feel like talking about it. I've been playing more recently. Um, so poker, Texas Hold'em specifically. To me, it's my favorite card game to play. I love cards. I love all card games except for War. If you ever played War, there's actually zero strategy, zero skill involved. It's just a monotonous activity of you flipping over cards until somebody has all of them in their hand, and it could take hours. Technically, it could take forever, but the odds of that happening are very slim. And the reason I love cards, and poker more specifically, is it allows me to use strategy, mathematics, interacting with people, reading people, and really it just puts extra intuition into freaking overdrive. I am a person who falls asleep very, very easily, which, from my understanding, is contrary to most extroverted ENTPs or dominant extrovert intuitives, or ENTPs more specifically. A lot of them are night owls, stay up late, all that kind of stuff. I'm actually a morning person, which is probably shocking for an ENTP, but I am. So the point I'm making is I go to sleep very easy. But after playing poker, I cannot go to sleep for a couple hours. And this is because my brain is just still going. As we're playing all the stuff in my hand, I'm still thinking about all that kind of stuff. And I could say more recently I've been staying up late with the inspirations and the thoughts and stuff that thoughts have been going through my head and things I've been working on. But yeah, poker, exciting for me. Math, connections. So some poker strategies, obviously, maybe not obviously for you guys. Poker, there are basically four kinds of players. Obviously there are more nuances than this, but simply on a basic level, there are four kinds of players. There is the tight, aggressive, which is most likely going to be the most profitable player. The tight, aggressive. There is the tight passive, and then there's the loose passive, which is going to be most of the time the player who loses the most money, and then there's the loose aggressive. And the loose aggressive is kind of a wild card. If the loose aggressive person knows how to play poker very well and understands the fundamentals to a T, and they're exceptional at reading their players and exploiting the other players at the table, the loose aggressive player can actually be the most profitable player. But for the most part, the tight aggressive player is going to be the most profitable player, and here's why. So, for example, let's just start at the loose passive. The loose passive player is most likely going to lose the most money for two reasons. They're not selective enough with their hands. So, kind of the idea of poker is you want to put your chips in when you have the best chance of winning. That's basically the game, okay? And there are other nuances to the game, obviously, but the basic premise of the game is you put your chips in when you think you have a better hand than your opponent. And a loose player is more often puts their chips in the table. They're going to do it more so than a tight player. A tight player, they're more tight with their money. They're more stingy, okay? I was like, I'm not going to put my chips in with some crappy hand. I want to have a really good hand. Now, there are different levels of tight and looseness, but a really tight player is only going to put their chips in with a very strong hand. Very strong starting hand, and then also going on between the flop, turn, and river. A loose player is a very, very loose player is going to play every single hand. Okay, that's going to be that's going to be the definition of the loosest player, always, to a very tight player where they're only going to play pocket aces. Okay, and then there are everyone in between. And most people are going to be closer to the middle, just like any other bell curve. But a loose player is going to put their money in more. So that means the tighter players more oftentimes are going to have a better chance of beating the loose player. Okay. So by default, the loose player is going to be more likely to lose their money because they're already going to be behind with their money in. Now, this is not taking to blinds to account all the other variables. I don't think I'm going to go that deep in this video. All the variables of poker. I'm just going to kind of talk about whatever. So, loose, tight. Now, you have aggressive and passive. Now, this is the key one. If you notice, the two ones I said that can be very profitable are both aggressive players. And this is because of fold equity. So, whenever you make a bet, so let's start with passive and aggressive. Passive is a person who does more calling. So, someone they don't make a lot of bets, okay, but they do call bets. Some call more bets than others. And an aggressive player is more likely to make more bets, to put their money in the middle first, before a passive player. So here's where the fold equity comes in. So let's say there's $10 in the middle, and we're playing heads up. That's you and me, or let's just say there's two people. Okay, you got the passive player and you got the aggressive player. Let's say they both have the exact same hand. They both have pocket tens. Okay, but the passive player over here is passive. They don't want to bet because they're not sure if they have the best hand. But here's the aggressive player over here. They have the exact same hand. But the aggressive player says, you know what? I might have the best hand, so let me just go ahead and bet. Well, the person who bets, the passive player can fold, and the aggressive player takes the pot. But the passive player doesn't bet. They go all the way down to the river, and here's the thing: when you bet, if the other person folds, you win the pot. So these are the benefits of being more aggressive. This is where you have what they call fold equity. So when you bet, you have the odds that in your mind. Obviously, this is all subjective. Poker is a very the objectiveness comes from the odds, but it's very subjective in some of the your understanding of the game and the other individual and the way that they're playing the game. But anyways, you bet and the other person's fold, so therefore you win the pot. But if you don't ever bet, then the only way you can win is if you beat the other person at showdown by having better cards. So this is the benefit of being aggressive. Now, a loose tight person could still win because they're only going to call when they have the best hand, but that's not the ideal situation. There are profitable players that way because they're going to be skilled at baiting their opponent into betting into them. But the tight aggressive is the easiest way to be a profitable poker player, by forcing people to fold when you bet, and then also if you're tight, you also have the image where the player thinks that you probably have it when you bet, and they may call you, and you're more likely to win. But when you're loose aggressive, and there's much more variance in a loose aggressive poker player, where they just throw their money around everywhere. But if you can read your players and you're very skilled in poker, then you know when and how to do it. And you're going to manipulate your opponent into folding when you don't have the best hand. And you're going to be able to, and if you know how to manipulate them or influence them into calling you when you do have the best hand, and making them think that you don't, then you're going to win that way. So this is why the loose aggressive has the most variance, and they have the potentiality to make the most money. But it takes a very skilled loose aggressive player to do this, and some of the professional poker players are loose aggressive, but most of them are going to be more of the tight aggressive variety. So that kind of sums up the four basic types of poker players, and then fold equity. Now there are other things. Obviously there are things like implied odds, and then you have pot odds. And then you have the position's also important. Who has to act first or last or in the middle or what have you. There are lots and lots and lots of aspects of poker. It's very complicated, okay? And that's why I love the game. I'm by no means am I a pro. I am an amateur. But I would say I'm better than the average person. I don't know if I could go. I don't know in the casino if I would be considered a profitable or break-even player. I don't think I'd be a losing player. I'd probably be a break-even or barely a profitable player at this point in my life, because I've been playing for like 10 years, and I have studied the game somewhat. But yeah, it's a fun game. Moving on to the next thing I want to talk about. Position. Position's actually a very important thing in poker. And you don't want to play every hand in every position. So hands like pocket aces, which is the best starting hand you can have, obviously you can play that on any part of the table. Now, things like 7-8 suited, which is, I like the hand, but I'm not, if I'm what they call under the gun, the first to act after the cards are dealt, I don't want to play that hand because you're at risk for being raised for your big blind. Contrary when you're on the and you're out of position too. That's probably even the more important part of that. But if you're either the cutoff or on the button, number one, chances are you're not going to get raised after you put your bet in or after you call a bet, whether it be the original blind or a small raise. And even if it's a big raise, if you have odds enough people calling beforehand, you still want to get in there. I'm not really talking about that right now. But yeah, this is the point where I'm saying you don't want to play every hand in every part of the table. So, for example, starting from strongest to weakest, and whatever your hand range is, and this is going to be your typical hand range for players. In any part of the table, you're going to want to play pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket, all the way down to about pocket nines, maybe even pocket eights. You play any part of the table, and then ace king, ace queen. I'd probably fold ace jack offsuit in early position. Ace jack suited, I'd get in there early position, and to get the most value out of your hands, if you're the first person to put money in the pot other than the blinds, you're gonna want to raise. It's going to it's not going to give away. If you raise consistently, it's not going to give away the strength of your hands. You know, if you limp, then you're giving away information. If you're consistent in your raising, then you have one less tail. Now, obviously, people may assume your raising ranges and stuff like that, but they just don't know. Anyways, so those are the cards you want to play at any part of the table. Now, going on to the next hands, which are going to be like any pocket pair lower than eights. Then we're talking about your king queen suited. I would say you can probably open up with king queen suited in early position, but anything lower, king jack off, king jack suited, queen jack, king 10, queen 10, ace jack offsuit, ace 10, ace 9's kind of those are all cards you want to play mid to late position. You can get in the hand with those. Low pocket pairs, I'd probably actually raise those. But that's kind of up to discretion, raising those in early position. But I would. That's kind of like the. Never mind. I think I said that. Well, I said earlier incorrectly. Yeah, pocket pairs, any position. Those other high offsuit hands, you just, in most cases, you just want to fold those in early position, because chances are you're going to lose money in the long run. And then other hands like suited connectors, king 9, ace 9, ace 7, ace whatever, king 9, queen 9, jack 9, one gap suited connectors and one gap suited cards that have one gap. You want to play those late position to the button, and you would just raise with those, so you don't give away any information by limping in with those hands. So that covers the ranges. And then other cards, you just most times you just want to fold. And this is obviously very basic. There is more advanced techniques to poker where you play these crappy hands, but that's for another time. And I don't even know if I'll make any more poker videos for this channel. Okay, so now we got the ranges down. Now that you have a range, it's also good to know that most players you play against are going to have a range as well. And most of them are going to be similar to the range I just gave you, depending on how loose or tight the player is. But and some of that comes from playing with the player and picking up on their tendencies, seeing their hands, seeing what they do in particular situations. Okay. So ranging. Now I want to go to pot sizing and pot odds. Yeah, that's not as good segue. Okay, I'm gonna talk about what's a strong hand and what's not a strong hand in a particular situation. So in poker, so when you hit the flop, a strong hand is top pair or better. That's considered a strong hand. But top pair on the river is considered weak. On the river, 2 pair is considered pretty good. And then trips or better is considered strong. And you have to consider the texture of the board too. How many straight combinations there are. Is there a flush on the board? How many of that? Is there a 3-card or 4-card flush on the board? Obviously, if it's a 4-card flush, it's easier for your opponents to have a flush because they only need 1 card in their holding of that suit in order to have a flush. But yes, is there a pair on the board? These are all things you have to consider in poker. So, a lot of people think top pair, top kicker is a good hand on the river, and it's really not. Honestly, unless you have a good read on your opponent, then you probably want to check top pair, top kicker on the river, especially out of position, because you have less information when you're acting before your opponent. Man, I want to talk about pot odds, but I feel like that's such a basic concept. I guess a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is basic concepts of poker. Pot odds. What are pot odds? So, beginner poker players are awful at this, at making terrible bet sizing. Okay, whenever you make a bet, you have to consider the size of the pot. If the pot is $100, you don't make a $10 bet with the nuts. Unless you think your opponent has absolute trash and you're just making the ultimate value bet. Okay. I see this a lot of times in beginner poker players. Okay. They make the same bet. Okay. Let's say your blinds are 1-2 and 5 people call. There's $10 in the pot. You flop a set of, you got pocket aces and ace hits. You got the nuts. You flopped a set of aces. Okay. And let's say the board pairs in the turn. You bet $5 in the flop, $5 in the turn, $5 in the river. Bad idea. That's not a profitable way of playing poker. So you got the nuts, okay? The nuts in poker, that's the terminology for the best hand possible. So on the flop, you bet 5, which is a half pot size bet. So when you bet half pot size, your opponent, okay, so now you bet $5 into a pot of 10. So now the pot's $15. So your opponent, they have to call $5. So from their perspective, they have what you call 3-to-1 odds. They have to put in $5 to win $15. Okay? The 1 is the 5 and the 3 is the 15. They're putting in 1/3 of the pot. That's why they get 3-to-1 pot odds. Because they put in $5 for the chance to win 3 times that amount, which is 15. So in this case where you have pocket aces, that's not a bad deal. But let's say you just had top pair, top kicker. And if they have enough outs, then they have the odds to call. Look, I don't even want to go down that route. It's a bad string. So let's go back to what I was saying before. Okay, so you bet 5. Let's say one person calls, everybody folds. Okay, so now the pot's $25, and you bet $5 again. Now the same person has 5-to-1 odds to call. Okay, so now you guys both, you bet 5, he calls. Now the river is $35. And now the pot's $35. And you bet $5 again. Now he has 7-to-1 odds. He only has to pay $5 to potentially win $35. Okay, and if your goal is to get this person to fold, it's probably not going to work by giving them such incredible odds to call. This is what's called pot odds. This is a very basic concept in poker. Pot odds. So don't do that whole. You got to take your bet sizing into consideration. And if you're not good at math, you probably shouldn't be playing poker for money. That's just the bottom line. So, I think I'm gonna end this. I'm gonna end this video here. If you guys like poker, let me know. If not, if you didn't care, let me know. Actually, don't. If you didn't care, don't let me know. If you guys like it, let me know. This is JD checking out. Bye.